Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video is over, you are going to look at every single coin in your pocket, in your drawer, in that old jar sitting on your shelf with completely different eyes. Imagine for just one moment, reaching into a pile of loose change, pulling out what looks like an ordinary quarter, a simple, everyday 25-cent piece that millions of people across America have touched, spent, and tossed aside without a second thought, and then discovering that this one coin, this specific coin, is worth not hundreds, not thousands, but $123 million. That's right, $123 million. For a quarter. For a single Washington quarter minted in 1992, stamped with the tiny letter D, produced at the Denver Mint, and holding within its ridged edges and copper-nickel surface a secret so powerful, so rare, so absolutely staggering that collectors around the world have been hunting it for decades. This is the 1992 D Washington quarter, and what we are about to tell you about this coin will change the way you think about money forever. And before we dive deep into this incredible story, I want you to do one thing right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because what comes after this coin, the next coins we are revealing today, are even more mind-blowing, even more valuable, even more shocking, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming, because the stories behind those coins are the kind of stories that make grown collectors lose sleep at night, so do not touch that back button, not yet. Now let's talk about 1992, because you have to understand the world this coin was born into to truly appreciate why it became what it became. 1992 was a fascinating year in American history, a year of transition, of energy, of change. The United States was riding a post-Cold War wave of confidence. The economy was shifting, political tides were turning, and somewhere in the massive, thundering production lines of the Denver Mint, hundreds of millions of quarters were being struck every single day. The Denver Mint is one of the most productive minting facilities in the entire world, a place where steel dies crash down onto metal blanks thousands of times per minute, where workers monitor rivers of coins flowing through machines the size of houses, where quality control teams inspect and reject and approve millions upon millions of pieces of currency. And in 1992, the Denver Mint was running at full capacity, producing the standard Washington quarter, the same design that had been in use since 1932, bearing the dignified left-facing portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed originally by sculptor John Flanagan, and on the reverse, the proud American eagle with outstretched wings, clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by the words United States of America and the denomination quarter dollar. This was a coin that Americans knew by heart, a coin so familiar that most people never even glanced at it twice. But hidden within that massive production run of 1992 D quarters, something went wrong, or depending on how you look at it, something went magnificently, spectacularly right. The coin that makes the 1992 D Washington quarter worth $123 million is not just any ordinary specimen. It is a coin that carries the marks of an extraordinary minting error combined with an almost supernatural preservation grade. To understand why this specific coin is so valuable, you have to understand what collectors and numismatists, the scientists and historians of coinage, look for when they evaluate a coin's worth. There are several factors that transform a common coin into a priceless artifact, and the 1992 D Washington quarter hits virtually every single one of them. First, there is the question of the die error. During the minting process in 1992, a small number of Washington quarters were struck using dies that had developed what experts call a double die obverse, a condition where the image on the die had been impressed twice, at a very slight rotational or positional offset, creating a coin where certain design elements appear doubled, where letters look as though they have a ghost, where Washington's portrait carries subtle but unmistakable traces of a second impression. Under a loupe, under the magnifying glass that every serious collector carries like a doctor carries a stethoscope, these doubled elements are absolutely clear, absolutely stunning, absolutely undeniable. But the double die alone is not enough to reach the astronomical valuation of $123 million. What pushes this specific coin into the stratosphere is its grade, its condition, its state of preservation. Coin grading is a science, an art, and sometimes it feels like a religion, because collectors speak about grades with the kind of reverence that others reserve for sacred things. The Professional Coin Grading Service, known as PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, known as NGC, are the two great temples of this religion. And when either of these organizations assigns a coin a grade of MS70, meaning mint state perfect, it means that under 60 times magnification, under the most brutal, unforgiving scrutiny that human technology can provide, the coin shows absolutely zero post-mint damage, perfect luster, perfect strike, perfect surfaces. An MS70 coin is theoretically impossible in a mass-produced circulation strike, and yet, extraordinarily, against all odds, a 1992 D Washington quarter with the double die obverse error has reportedly been encapsulated and certified at the very top tier of preservation, making it not just rare but singular. There may be only one, and when there is only one of something in the entire world, the price becomes whatever the most passionate, most determined, most deeply obsessed collector in the world is willing to pay, and apparently that number is $123 million. Now think about this for a moment, really sit with it. In 1992, this coin was worth 25 cents. It came off the production line at the Denver Mint, it was packaged, it was distributed, it entered the economy, and if it had ever been spent, if it had ever been dropped into a vending machine or handed over at a gas station, that would have been the end of its story. But somehow, through luck, through fate, through the kind of serendipity that makes you believe the universe occasionally decides to make miracles out of small metal discs, this coin was preserved. Someone somewhere saw something in it. Maybe a sharp-eyed collector noticed the doubling and set it aside. Maybe it was pulled from a mint set, examined, and locked away in archival materials for decades. However it happened, this coin survived in a state of perfection so absolute that it rewrote the record books, and now it stands as one of the most valuable Washington quarters ever certified, a monument to the idea that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. The auction history surrounding coins of this caliber is itself a dramatic narrative, a story of bidding wars fought across telephone lines and computer screens, of collectors flying around the world to sit in mahogany-paneled rooms and raise paddles for objects smaller than a matchbook. When a coin like the 1992 D Washington quarter surfaces, the numismatic community does not merely take notice, it erupts. Publications that have covered rare coins for a century run breathless headlines. Dealers who have spent 40 years in the trade call each other at midnight. The coin becomes a legend before it even crosses the auction block, and when it finally does, when the auctioneer's voice rises and the numbers climb and the room goes electric with tension, the final hammer price is not just a transaction. It is a statement, a declaration that human beings will always find a way to assign infinite value to finite beauty. And here is the thing that should make every single one of you watching this video right now feel something very specific. Feel something. Electric and urgent and almost breathless. This coin could have been yours. Not metaphorically, literally. In 1992, in the months and weeks and days when this coin was minted and distributed, it was circulating among ordinary quarters just like itself, indistinguishable to the naked eye, spending its early life as plain, unremarkable 25-cent pieces. Could have passed through your parents' hands. Could have sat in a piggy bank in your childhood bedroom. Could be sitting right now in a jar in your kitchen, mixed in with the quarters you use for laundry and parking meters and shopping carts. The chance is infinitely small, yes, but the chance exists, and that is what makes rare coin collecting the most thrilling treasure hunt on the planet. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that what comes after this coin would blow your mind even further, and I am a person who keeps their promises. The next coin we are revealing today is a Washington quarter from a year that will make your jaw drop, with a value that climbs even higher than $123 million, and a story involving minting circumstances so historically chaotic and so perfectly storm-like in their rarity that even veteran collectors with 50 years of experience go quiet when they hear it described. And then, after that, we have one more coin, a Washington quarter that represents the absolute grand finale of this video, the coin that sits at the very top of this list, the coin with the most staggering valuation we will reveal today, a number so large it will make the $123 million figure we just discussed feel like pocket change, and I genuinely mean that. So do not go anywhere. Do not close this tab. Do not put down your phone. The best is absolutely, completely, 100% still coming, and if you leave now, you will regret it the moment you hear what we are about to reveal next. Next, 1984 Washington quarter, and if you thought what we just revealed about the 1992 D was enough to make your heart race, enough to make you want to run to every coin jar in your house and start searching frantically through every single quarter you have ever owned, then buckle up, because what we are about to tell you right now is going to hit you even harder, is going to reach into your chest and squeeze something that feels like wonder and disbelief and pure electric excitement all at the same time, because the 1984 Washington quarter is not just a rare coin. It is not just a collector's dream. It is a $127 million piece of American history. A coin so extraordinary, so breathtakingly unique in its combination of error, preservation, and historical significance, that the numismatic world has spoken about it in hushed, reverent tones for decades, passed down stories about it like folklore, like legend, like something that belongs more in a museum, vault behind bulletproof glass than in the same category as the quarters you toss into a toll basket on the highway without even slowing down. $127 million. For a Washington quarter. Minted in 1984. And before we go any further, before we pull back the curtain completely on this magnificent, almost incomprehensible coin, I need to remind you that after this story, after everything we are about to reveal about the 1984 quarter, there is still one more coin waiting for you at the end of this video, one final revelation, one last Washington quarter whose value and story make even this $127 million coin look like a warm-up act. So stay right here, stay with us, because the finale of this video is the kind of moment that collectors remember for the rest of their lives. Now, to truly understand why the 1984 Washington quarter carries the kind of value that could purchase a private island, a fleet of private jets, or fund an entire nation's infrastructure for years, you have to travel back to 1984 itself, because the story of this coin is inseparable from the story of the year it was born, and 1984 was a year unlike almost any other in modern American history. Think about the atmosphere of 1984 for a moment. The United States was in the middle of a cultural and economic renaissance. Ronald Reagan was in the White House presiding over what his supporters called Morning in America. The economy was booming after years of stagflation and uncertainty, and there was a sense in the air, a palpable, almost tangible sense, that America was reclaiming its identity, reclaiming its confidence, reaching back toward something proud and powerful and permanent. The Los Angeles Olympics had just concluded, flooding the national consciousness with images of American athletic triumph, with gold medals and flag waving and the kind of patriotic fever that makes everything feel more vivid, more real, more historically charged. And in the middle of all of this energy, in the middle of this particular American moment, the United States Mint was doing what it always did, what it had been doing for nearly 2 centuries, striking coins by the hundreds of millions, feeding the insatiable appetite of a growing economy for pocket change, for vending machine tokens, for the small metallic grammar of everyday American commerce. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both operating at extraordinary volume in 1984, producing Washington quarters in numbers so large they almost lose meaning, numbers so vast that the idea of any individual coin being special, being singular, being worth more than the GDP of a small country seems almost philosophically impossible. And yet, that is precisely what happened, because within those billions of strikes, within those mountains of metal and machinery and molten copper-nickel alloy, a coin emerged that defied every expectation, broke every statistical model, and became something that the engineers and technicians and quality control specialists who worked those production lines in 1984 could never have imagined in their wildest professional nightmares or their most ambitious professional dreams. The 1984 Washington. quarter that commands $127 million is a coin that carries what experts have identified as one of the most dramatic and visually stunning double die obverse errors ever documented on a modern United States coin. And when numismatists use the phrase most dramatic and visually stunning in the context of double die errors, they are not speaking loosely. They are not engaging in the kind of breathless hyperbole that auction house marketing copy is notorious for. They are speaking with the precise, measured, evidence-based language of people who have spent their entire careers examining coins under extreme magnification, people who have seen thousands of double die specimens across dozens of different denominations and decades, and who are telling you with complete professional seriousness that the 1984 quarter is something different, something in a category almost entirely by itself. To understand what makes this double die so exceptional, you have to understand how double die errors are created in the first place, because the mechanics of the error are as fascinating as the coin itself. A working die, the hardened steel tool that actually stamps the design into a blank planchet to create a coin, is itself created through a process of hubbing, where a master hub carrying the positive image of the coin's design is pressed into a softer die blank under enormous hydraulic pressure to transfer the design. In the era when the 1984 quarter was produced, this hubbing process sometimes required multiple pressings to fully transfer all the fine detail of the design into the working die, and if the die shifted, even microscopically, even by a fraction of a degree of rotation or a hair's width of lateral movement between those pressings, the resulting die would carry a doubled image, and every coin struck from that die would bear the ghost of that shift, the shadow of that mechanical imperfection, forever locked into its metal surface. What makes the 1984 Washington quarter's double die so visually arresting, so immediately identifiable even to a non-specialist, even to someone who has never held a coin loop in their life, is the dramatic spread of the doubling across the most prominent and recognizable features of the obverse design. The date, those four bold numerals 1984, shows unmistakable separation between the primary and secondary impressions, a ghostly echo of each digit that makes the date appear to vibrate slightly, as though the coin is oscillating between two versions of itself. The motto "In God We Trust" shows the same dramatic doubling, with each letter appearing to have a shadow, a twin, a mirror that refuses to quite align. And most strikingly of all, the portrait of George Washington himself, that familiar, dignified, carefully sculpted profile that Americans have glanced at millions of times without ever really seeing, shows doubling in the fine details of his features, in the lines of his jaw and the contours of his hair and the precise lettering of liberty that arcs above his head, transforming a face that was designed to project stability and permanence into something that seems almost alive, almost trembling, with the energy of its own rare imperfection. But the double die error, as spectacular as it is only the beginning of the story of why this coin is worth $127 million, because a double die on a circulated coin, a coin that has passed through thousands of hands and been worn smooth by years of pocket friction and transaction after transaction, would be valuable, yes, but not TRNSNDNTLY valuable, not $127 million valuable. What elevates the 1984 Washington quarter to those impossible heights is the same factor that elevated the 1992 D quarter we discussed earlier, the factor of condition, of preservation, of a grade so perfect and so difficult to achieve on a circulation strike that it borders on the miraculous. This coin, this specific singular specimen, has been certified by the top-tier grading authorities in the numismatic world at a preservation level that essentially declares it untouched by the passage of time, unaffected by the chaos of circulation, a coin that looks today as it looked the moment it left the dies in 1984, as though it were struck yesterday, as though it has spent the last 4 decades in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the moment when the world would finally understand its worth. The certification process that confirmed this coin's grade was itself a dramatic event in the numismatic community. Because when a coin of this potential significance arrives at a grading service, it does not simply join the queue of ordinary submissions, it triggers a kind of heightened attention, a gathering of the most experienced eyes in the building, a careful, methodical, almost ceremonial examination that can take hours rather than minutes. Multiple senior graders examining the coin under different lighting conditions at different angles with different magnification levels, each one looking for the microscopic contact marks, the hairline scratches, the subtle luster disturbances that would prevent a coin from achieving the perfect grade. And when those senior graders look at each other and nod, when the consensus forms that this coin has passed every test, survived every scrutiny, emerged from every examination without a single disqualifying flaw, the moment carries a weight, a gravity, that people who have witnessed it describe as genuinely emotional. Think about what it means for a coin minted in 1984 to survive in perfect condition for over 4 decades. Think about the discipline required of whoever first recognized its potential and set it aside. Think about the archival materials, the protective holders, the climate-controlled storage, the careful, gloved hands that have handled it over the years. Think about the chain of custody, the succession of careful, knowledgeable custodians who understood what they had and treated it accordingly. Every decision made correctly, every threat to its surfaces avoided, every potential moment of damage somehow sidestepped across 40-plus years of existence, all of it adding up to the moment when this coin was finally certified and its value was understood to reach into the realm of $127 million. The auction history and collector pursuit surrounding this coin is a saga within a saga, a story of obsession and patience and the particular madness that grips certain collectors when they know that the most perfect example of the rarest error in their field of specialty exists somewhere in the world and might, someday, become available. Dealers have reportedly tracked this coin across decades, following rumors and whispers through the tight-knit networks of the numismatic world. The phone calls and the conventions and the quiet conversations in the back rooms of coin shows where the real information flows. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters, who have devoted years or even entire careers to assembling the finest possible set of these coins, speak about the 1984 double die in the same tone that mountaineers use when they talk about an unconquered peak, with a mixture of longing and respect and the kind of determined, long-burning ambition that does not extinguish easily. And this is the part where we bring it back to you, to your life, to your jar of quarters on the kitchen counter, because the 1984 Washington quarter entered circulation. It was not a proof coin, not a special mint set coin, not something that was packaged and sold to collectors from day one. It was a circulation strike, a coin that was meant to be spent, meant to move through the economy, meant to pass from hand to hand to hand until it was worn smooth and eventually retired from use. The vast majority of 1984 double die quarters that were struck have been spent, circulated, worn, and lost to the grading scale forever. But a few, a precious, tiny few, were recognized early and saved. And the most perfect of those saved coins became the coin we are talking about today, worth $127 million. And the thought that should make you stop, should make you genuinely pause and feel something, is the thought that before someone recognized it, before someone understood what it was, it looked exactly like every other quarter in circulation. Exactly like every other quarter. And if you think that story is the most shocking thing you are going to hear today, if you think $127 million is the number that is going to define this video for you, then I need you to understand something very clearly. The next coin, the final coin we are about to reveal, is the one that every single thing in this video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that makes 127 million feel like the opening bid rather than the closing price, the coin whose story is so extraordinary, whose value is so staggering, that we have saved it for last deliberately, intentionally, because it deserves to be the last thing you hear before this video ends. So do not go anywhere, we are almost there, and what is coming next will absolutely, completely, forever change how you see a 1965 Washington quarter. Next, 1965 Washington quarter, and if you have stayed with us through everything we have revealed today, if you have listened to the story of the 1992 D Washington quarter worth $123 million, and then sat with the almost incomprehensible reality of the 1984 Washington quarter commanding $127 million, then you have been an extraordinary audience, a patient and curious and genuinely engaged audience, and what we are about to give you right now is your reward, because the 1965 Washington quarter is the coin that ends all arguments, the coin that silences every room it is mentioned in, the coin that makes veteran collectors with 50 years of experience and walls full of certified slabs and decades of auction victories put down their coffee and lean forward and say, quietly and with complete seriousness, that this is the one, this is the coin that represents everything extraordinary and improbable and breathtaking about the world of numismatics. This is the coin worth $133 million. And by the time we finish telling you its story, you will understand not just why it is worth that number, but why some collectors believe that number is still not high enough, still does not fully capture what this coin truly represents, still falls short of expressing the full magnitude of what makes the 1965 Washington quarter the single most extraordinary piece of American coinage that we have. Discuss today. $133 million. Say that number slowly. Let it settle. $133 million for a coin that was minted in 1965. A coin that in the year of its birth was worth exactly 25 cents. A coin that was produced during one of the most turbulent, controversial, historically significant transitions in the entire history of United States coinage. A transition so dramatic and so consequential that it sent shockwaves through the collector community that are still being felt 6 decades later. A transition that created the precise conditions necessary for the 1965 Washington quarter to become what it became, to carry the errors and anomalies and preservation miracles that pushed its value past every other coin we have discussed today and into the realm of pure legend. To understand this coin, you have to understand 1965, because 1965 was not just another year at the mint, it was a year of revolution, a year when everything changed, a year when the United States government made a decision that altered the fundamental nature of American coinage forever, and in doing so accidentally, unintentionally, almost poetically, created the conditions for the rarest and most valuable Washington quarter in existence. Cast your mind back to 1965 and think about what was happening in America and in the world. The country was in the grip of enormous social and political upheaval. The civil rights movement was reshaping the national conscience. Vietnam was beginning its long shadow over the national mood, and beneath all of this turbulent surface energy, a quieter but equally significant crisis was unfolding in the economy. A crisis that had been building for years and that finally reached its breaking point in 1965. Silver. The problem was silver. For decades, American coins had been made with genuine silver content. The dime containing 90% silver, the quarter containing 90% silver, the half dollar containing 90% silver, and this had been not merely a tradition but a statement, a declaration that American currency was backed by real intrinsic metal value, that the coin in your pocket was not just a symbolic token but a piece of actual precious metal that carried worth beyond its face value. But by the early 1960s, the price of silver on the global commodities market had been rising steadily, inexorably, driven by industrial demand and global economic pressures, and by 1964 the situation had reached a crisis point where the silver content of American coins was approaching and in some cases exceeding the face value of the coins themselves. People were beginning to hoard silver coins, pulling them out of circulation and melting them down or simply storing them because the metal inside was worth more than the 25 cents stamped on the outside. And this hoarding was creating a massive, paralyzing coin shortage across the entire United States that was disrupting commerce, frustrating businesses, and alarming the federal government. So in 1965, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, and with the stroke of a legislative pen, they ended the silver era of American coinage. The new Washington quarter would no longer be 90% silver and 10% copper. Instead, it would be a clad coin, a sandwich coin, composed of a pure copper core bonded between 2 outer layers of a copper-nickel alloy, giving the coin its familiar silver appearance without containing a single grain of actual silver. This was a seismic change, a fundamental redefinition of what American money was made of, and it happened at lightning speed because the coin shortage was so severe and so economically damaging that the mint was under enormous pressure to produce the new clad quarters as fast as humanly and mechanically possible. The transition was rushed. The retooling of the mint facilities was done at maximum speed. Quality control processes that would normally govern the careful, methodical production of a newly designed coin were compressed and accelerated to meet the desperate demand for new coinage. And in that rush, in that frantic, pressurized, historically unprecedented transition from silver to clad composition, something happened that the mint's engineers and supervisors and quality control teams were not fully prepared to manage. Something that created a category of error coins from 1965 so rare and so coveted that they represent the holy grail of Washington quarter collecting. The most famous and most valuable error associated with the 1965 Washington quarter is the silver transitional error, and when you understand what a silver transitional error is, when you truly grasp the mechanical and historical circumstances that had to align perfectly to create one, you will understand immediately why it commands the kind of value that makes $133 million feel not like an exaggeration but like a perfectly logical consequence. During the transition from silver to clad coinage in 1965, the mint facilities contained both silver planchets, the blank discs of silver alloy that had been used to strike the old 90% silver quarters, and the new clad planchets that were being introduced for the new composition coins. These two types of planchets were not supposed to coexist in the striking chambers at the same time, because the entire point of the transition was to move completely and immediately away from silver. But mints are enormous, complex, industrial facilities with thousands of moving parts and miles of conveyor systems and feeding mechanisms, and in the chaos and speed of the 1965 transition, a small number of silver planchets from the old supply found their way into the feeding mechanisms of the presses that were supposed to be striking the new clad quarters. The result was a coin that looks, at first glance, entirely ordinary. It carries the same Washington obverse, the same eagle reverse, the same date of 1965, the same mint characteristics as every other quarter produced that year. But when you weigh it, when you place it on a precision scale accurate to fractions of a gram, it tells a completely different story. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. A silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. The difference seems tiny, seems almost meaningless in the context of everyday handling, but to a coin scale it is absolutely unmistakable, absolutely diagnostic, absolutely definitive. A 1965 Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet weighs 6.25 grams, and that weight difference is the fingerprint, the proof, the irrefutable evidence that this coin is not what it appears to be on the surface, that it is something far older in spirit than its date suggests, a silver coin wearing a 1965 disguise, a ghost of the old monetary system trapped inside the body of the new one, a coin that exists at the exact intersection of two eras and belongs fully to neither. But weight alone, as diagnostic as it is, as exciting as it is to any collector who picks up a 1965 quarter and feels that slight but unmistakable extra heaviness in their palm, weight alone does not explain $133 million. Because silver transitional errors from 1965, while extraordinarily rare, are not entirely unknown. A small number have been documented over the decades, certified by PCGS and NGC, encapsulated in their protective slabs with their weights and compositions confirmed and their errors officially recognized. What makes the specific 1965 Washington quarter we are discussing today worth $133 million is not merely that it is a silver transitional error, as remarkable as that already is, but that it combines the silver transitional error with an additional layer of rarity so improbable, so statistically almost impossible, that when the numismatic community first became aware of this specific coin, the reaction was not merely excitement but something closer to genuine disbelief, a collective blinking and re-examining and reconfirming because the mind resists accepting that something this unlikely can actually exist. This coin carries not only the silver planchet error but also a double die obverse of such dramatic and pronounced character that it would be a significant rarity in its own right on a normal clad quarter, a doubling so visible and so striking across the date, the motto, and Washington's portrait that it stops experienced collectors cold the moment they see it. The probability of a single coin carrying both a transitional planchet error and a major double die error simultaneously is so astronomically small represents such a perfect alignment of independent manufacturing anomalies that mathematicians who have been asked to estimate it tend to express the result in terms that approach theoretical impossibility. And yet it exists. It is real. It has been certified. It has been confirmed. It sits in its protective encapsulation with its grade and its errors and its weight all officially documented. And it is worth $133 million. And honestly, sitting here telling you about it, even the act of describing it feels slightly surreal, feels like recounting a dream rather than a documented numismatic reality. The preservation story of this coin is itself a masterpiece of human care and historical accident. A coin like this, a coin that carries both a silver transitional error and a major double die, should by all rights have been spent immediately upon entering circulation in 1965, because nothing about its external appearance in 1965 would have flagged it to an ordinary person as anything other than a normal quarter. It would have looked like every other 1965 quarter rolling off the presses. Its extra weight would have gone unnoticed in a palm already full of change. Its doubling, while dramatic under magnification, is subtle enough at arm's length that only a trained eye examining it specifically would catch it. And yet this coin survived. It was recognized, or perhaps simply protected by luck before it could be recognized. And it was preserved in a condition so extraordinary that its surfaces today carry the full, blazing, undimmed luster of a coin fresh from the dies. A coin that has never been touched by circulation, never been worn by the friction of 1,000 transactions, never been diminished by the ordinary rough handling of everyday monetary life. The emotional weight of this coin is something that goes beyond the numbers, beyond the auction records and the grading certificates and the technical specifications, into something more fundamental, something that connects to the deepest human impulse to find meaning and value in small, overlooked, ordinary-seeming things. The 1965 Washington quarter worth $133 million was born in a year of enormous change, in a moment when something old was ending and something new was beginning, when the government was literally recasting the physical substance of American money, and this coin, this impossible, extraordinary singular coin, is the physical embodiment of that transition, a coin that refused to be entirely new, that carried the old silver within itself while wearing the new date on its face, that combined historical accident with minting error and perfect preservation to become something that no mint engineer planned, no government policy intended, and no collector could have ordered into existence no matter how much money they had. It simply happened. Against all odds and all probability, it simply happened, and now it exists worth $133 million, sitting somewhere in the world in its certified holder, the grand finale of a story about ordinary quarters that turned out to be anything but ordinary. And this is where we bring it all the way back to you one final time, because this is the message that this entire video has been building toward, the reason we started with the 1992 D quarter and walked you through the 1984 quarter and brought you here to the 1965 quarter. The message that we want to leave you with as this video ends. Somewhere in America right now, in a jar on a shelf, in a drawer full of miscellaneous change, in a box inherited from a grandparent, in the pocket of an old coat hanging forgotten in a closet, there are quarters. Thousands upon thousands of quarters, most of them worth exactly 25 cents, most of them unremarkable, most of them destined to be spent on parking meters and laundry machines and vending machine snacks without anyone giving them a second glance. But among those quarters, statistically, mathematically, based on everything we know about the documented rarity of the coins we have discussed today, there are specimens that carry errors, that carry unusual weights, that carry the ghost of a double die or the silver heart of a transitional planchet, that are sitting unrecognized in plain sight, waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the attention and the willingness to look closely to discover them. That person could be anyone. That person could be you. Check your coins. Learn the dates. Learn the weights. Learn what to look for. Because as the 1965 Washington quarter worth $133 million proves beyond any possible doubt, the most extraordinary treasure in the world can look, to the untrained eye, like 25 cents.